If you're someone here, it's unlikely to be much ado about nothing. But in this video, I'm going to show you how to get full marks for an essay on Much Ado About Nothing for OCR GCSE English Literature. Many thanks and enjoy watching Schofield on Shakespeare.
Abbiamo il cuore a strisce, portaci dove vuoi.
You need to know what the examiner is looking for, especially at the top ends. So to get full marks, your essay needs to be very well written and to flow using consistently formal language. You need to show a perceptive understanding of the extract in relation to the question and the play as a whole. You need to embed carefully chosen quotations, both from the passage and those you have previously memorised from the entire play. You need to probe these quotations in detail using subject terminology. And you also need to weave in a few references to the context. Remember, Much Ado was first performed in 1599, when the world was a very different place. There are also 4 marks for spag. Here's a past question. I would recommend writing a full response on this before comparing it to mine. The extract will appear at 5-second intervals. Get writing.
So, how did you get on? Time to compare your response with my 40 out of 40 cracker.
In this extract, Claudio, easily fooled by Don John's machinations, disgracefully accuses Hero of cheating on him at the wedding altar. Such an accusation would have been seen as deeply shameful for the Renaissance woman and justifiable grounds for humiliating exposure and immediate termination of relationship. Overall, this extract suggests that Claudio and Hero do not know each other very well, with the former coming across as pathetically whining and ludicrously melodramatic to the modern audience in particular. Rather than speak to Hero herself about the accusations, he predominantly addresses Leonato and the collected assembly. Take her back again. Give not this rotten orange to your friends. The use of repeated imperatives highlights the urgency of Claudio's feelings. He feels humiliated and wants her out of his sight as quickly as possible. Moreover, his language stresses the transactional nature of his relationship. As opposed to developing a mutually fulfilling equal relationship, he has been given a woman by a respected fellow male. The use of the metaphor rotten orange highlights Claudio's indignation at what he sees as the deceiving contrast between Hero's apparently flawless, perfect, hero-like exterior and her morally putrid interior, something confirmed by his subsequent rhetorical question, "Would you not swear that she were a maid by these exterior shows?" This extract also confirms that Claudio and Hero have not yet had sex, and indeed appear to have had a strangely awkward courtship. Hero is characterised by her silence during much of her interactions with Claudio throughout the play. She doesn't even say anything once her engagement to Claudio is confirmed, in spite of Beatrice's exhortation for her to speak cousin. And this continues in the first half of this extract, as Leonato suggests that he himself might have made defeat of Hero's virginity. Note the use of military imagery, which implies a binary opposition between men and women in sex, with men as aggressive victors and the women as crushed and conquered. However, Claudio confirms their lack of intimacy and claims that as a brother to his sister showed bashful sincerity and comely love. Claudio is clearly aiming to emphasise his own decency and prior willingness to protect his betrothed's honour prior to marriage. Nonetheless, the comparison with a brother and sister seems rather peculiar. Brothers and sisters do not go on to marry each other, and this phrase hints at a physical and an emotional detachment between the pair, something confirmed by the adjective bashful, which suggests that Claudio may have been particularly sensitive and modest in his interactions with his future wife. Claudio is, or was, clearly in love with the idea of marrying perfection, a hero if you like, rather than a living, breathing human being. Following Hero's belated indignant question, he melodramatically declares to the wedding gathering that she seemed to him as dying in her orb, as chaste as is the bud ere it be blown. Both these similes suggest that Claudio is better at comparing Hero to something else, rather than understanding her actual identity. Diana was the goddess of chastity, inhabiting a different planet, whilst he used to believe her sexual purity was akin to an unopened flower. Both images are cliched and show Claudio following conventional Renaissance idealization of the beautiful virginal female, rather than understanding the potential complexities of her character. He doesn't seem to have developed his understanding of Hero since first inquiring of Benedict in Act 1, Scene 1, can the world buy such a jewel? This metaphor paints Hero as a glittering, precious commodity. The hyperbole in the reference to the world may seem to flatter, but ultimately this rhetorical question confirms the idea that a woman can be purchased as something for the man to show off, rather than valued as an equal partner. Rather like Romeo in the early stages of Romeo and Juliet, Claudio seems too immature to genuinely love, and seems more in love with the idea rather than the person. His extraordinary haste to marry Hero also seems worrying, bearing in mind how little time he has spent speaking to her. In Act 2, he suggests that the pair should get married tomorrow. Time goes on crutches till love have all its rights. The personification of time limping may seem poetic, but the generic reference to love needing all the rights suggests that Claudio may be more interested in the concept of a grand passion and the possibility of sex, rather than Hero herself. The final scene of the play sees Claudio showing his penance by agreeing to marry Leonato's niece, who, it transpires, is Hero, who hasn't died after all. Whilst Hero is reasonably lively when conspiring in the plot to bring Benedict and Beatrice together, when it comes to her own relationship, she is dispiritingly passive, seemingly forgetting and forgiving the extent of her marriage altar humiliation. Her final words to Claudio in the play are, "One hero died defiled, but I do live, and surely as I live I am a maid." This sentence is structured in order to emphasise her own chastity and purity, with maid positioned triumphantly at the end. And the fact her reputation was ruthlessly torn to shred or defiled is hidden away in an earlier clause. The iambic pentameter flows perfectly, and the implication is clear. Life can go on smoothly, and Hero and Claudio can now live happily ever after. However, for the modern audience, this relationship remains unsatisfactory, particularly in comparison to Benedict and Beatrice, who clearly relish each other's company. Claudio's melodramatic vindictiveness retains a bitter flavour, whilst we still know very little about Hero, other than that she most certainly is a virgin. Sum up the extract in relation to the question within a short, lively introduction. Start with a topic sentence sharply focused on the question. Don't waffle. Choose your quotations very carefully. Remember that it is always easier to produce detailed and sensitive analysis for imagery. Trim quotations using square brackets if you're altering the original words. Very occasionally you might want to use a satellite quotation. This is a quotation you don't analyse but merely use for AO1 purposes, i.e. to show you a consistently perceptive understanding of the text. Remember to use subject terminology, which doesn't need to be massively complicated. Here it is military imagery and adjective. Remember that you need to weave in references to the context, and this will often take place at the end of paragraphs, as is the case here when I point out that Claudio's language shows him following the conventional Renaissance idealization of the beautiful virginal female. I suspect many responses which achieve full marks in this section show a flair with writing. This is more difficult to teach, but perhaps you can glean this in phrases such as with made positioned triumphantly at the end, and the confident use of dashes, turn to shreds dash or defiled dash. I don't think you need a conclusion regurgitating all your points, but there should be an air of finality, which there is here with the emphatic point that all we know about Hero is that she most certainly is a virgin. Finally, you may find it helpful to look at some of the suggested points in relation to the assessment objectives from the OCR mark scheme. Press pause if you would like to read these through now.
You've been watching Schofield on Shakespeare. Many thanks for watching.